The gigantic government sucks. Pursuit of happiness radio is deluxe. Liberty and freedom will make you smile. The pursuit of happiness on your radio dial. Just as cheeseburgers and liberty fries, it's pursuit of happiness time.
All right, let's do this. Today is National Have a Bad Day Day. Not a problem, replied every Democrat in America. Thanks for turning on your radio, kids. It's me. You know who I am. Hopefully you do. I'm Kenny Webster. Thanks for watching this video. If you're new, I'm on the radio, but I'm also live streaming on social media. I know that could be confusing. Sometimes I forget people are watching me. Sometimes I forget people are listening to me. Sometimes I don't realize anyone's there at all. I'm just picking my nose, and I look up and realize there are several hundred people watching me on camera. At any rate, you're here, so thank you so much. You know who's joining me this afternoon? A friend of mine named Riley James. He is a broadcast guy. He does TV and radio in San Diego. And as a Texan, we're going to do a deep dive today into California politics. I suspect probably in 2026, you're going to, in the next 2 years or so, getting ready for 2028, I think it's going to be Gavin Newsom versus Ben Shapiro. Excuse me, Ben Shapiro, sorry. Josh Shapiro. A little different there. Both Jewish, kind of different political opinions. But anyway, we'll get to all that later on. Stick around. In the meantime, lots going on today with World War III and trans sports and Hollywood and P. Diddy. And it's all coming up real soon. But let's start the show with this. I cannot believe this keeps happening. Or maybe I can. It's not that hard to believe. The Pentagon has just failed an audit for the 7th year in a row. Now, for those of you that are new here, if you don't really know who I am, I'm not real big on policing the whole world. I'm not the kind of guy that wants to fund both sides of every war. Call me crazy here, but I just think if there are lobbyists and politicians masquerading as military generals that think maybe we need to take all the money out of my bank account and give it to Zelensky, I'm not real cool with that. I imagine a lot of you would generally agree with me. Maybe that's why you're here. And as it turns out, reported today at Reason.com, the Pentagon has failed its annual financial audit for the 7th year in a row. Now, let's be clear about something. I'm very glad that Trump just won. But when Trump was president last time around, he didn't always get along with the people at the Pentagon. He didn't always get, Mark Milley and Mad Dog Mattis, and these guys were often at odds with Donald Trump, who thought, hey, maybe we should do things that are good for American citizens. And then these guys said, no, maybe we should do things that are good for lobbyists from the military-industrial complex. Did you see how things are bad right now in Russia? North Korean troops are helping Russia invade Ukraine. Ukraine is launching weapons we gave them into Russia right now, and the stock market has reacted exactly how you would think to all of this news right after Putin signed new memorandums, basically a legal document in his country saying, you know what, we're going to be a little more gung-ho about nuclear war around here. If America starts popping off, maybe we'll dust off the nuclear warheads and we'll bomb Ukraine. And the stock market reacted to that exactly how you would think. Pretty much when the Dow Jones opened up this morning, I haven't looked at it in the last hour or two, almost every stock was down, except the military-industrial stocks. Even Boeing, which has planes falling out of the sky and recently had to abandon the space industry, had a pretty good morning for the first time in a while. And as somebody that's kind of held some Boeing stock for years now, of all that, it's the only military-industrial stock that sucked, but that's another conversation altogether. So not shockingly, a lot of people aren't thrilled about the fact that we may be starting another, we're already in World War III. I think that's been established now. If North Korea and Iran and China and Russia, if they're all connected with each other and they're helping get more involved in places like Israel, yeah, I would say for all intent and purposes, this is World War III. You could quit asking that question. It's World War III. It's been World War III. We don't need to quit wondering that. We do, however, have to wonder what happened to almost $900 billion at the Pentagon. Almost $900 billion is almost $1 trillion. That's how much money they lost in the last year. Now, like I said, this isn't new. This isn't news. This has been happening. It was a problem when the Republicans were in charge. That Trump tried to clean house. He did the best he could. It's clearly a problem when the Democrats are in charge because they love war almost as much as they love abortion and mutilating the genitals of young kids with chemical castration drugs. So I noticed the last time this happened, roughly a year to a year and a half ago, Jon Stewart, not my favorite comedian, but kind of like Bill Maher, at least he's right once in a while. He is interviewing the deputy secretary in charge of the Pentagon. That would be the Deputy Defense Secretary, Kathleen Hicks. The last time this audit happened, and we realized you actually lost hundreds of billions of dollars. For those of you that are watching me right now on social media, you will not be able to miss the smug look on this woman's face. But to those of you just listening on the radio, just know every time Jon Stewart asks her a reasonable question about what happened to billions of dollars at the Pentagon, she rolls her eyes, she laughs, she tries to change the subject.
There is a lot of waste, fraud, and abuse within a system.
Audits and waste, fraud, and abuse are not the same thing. So let's decompose these pieces.
Please educate me on
Sure.
What
so an audit
the
is exactly what you just described,
yes.
which is, do I know what was delivered to which place?
Right.
The ability to pass an audit or the fact that the DOD has not passed an audit is not suggestive of waste, fraud, and abuse. That is completely false right there.
What?
So
what is
now
it
it's a question of, it's suggestive that we don't have an accurate inventory that we can pull up of what we have where.
Sounds like fraud.
That is not the same as saying we can't do that because waste, fraud, and abuse has occurred.
So in my world,
yeah,
that's waste.
Yeah.
How is that waste?
If I give you $1 billion and you can't tell me what happened to it,
yeah,
that to me is wasteful. That means you are not responsible. But if you can't tell me where it went, then what am I supposed to think?
Yeah.
And when there has been reporting, I mean, this is not, look, I'm not saying this is on you and that you caused this.
Watch
but
out.
I think it's a tough argument to
I'm pretty
make
sure
that
I didn't cause it.
an $850 billion budget to an organization that can't pass an audit and tell you where that money went.
If this was, I'm going to stop him right there because Jon Stewart's making a lot of good points, but I bet most of you have probably already thought of this before he even said it. If this was the private industry, this company would have gone bankrupt. Stockholders would be standing outside of the office building with torches and pitchforks. They'd be furious about it. But in government, there's no accountability. Now, you can't just say, all right, well, they got a money printing machine. What difference does it make? Makes a pretty big difference. To somebody that can't afford to buy groceries right now, and they're saving money, they're investing in things, but for some reason, when I put dollars in my savings account, the value on it, even though the number of dollars is going up, the value on those dollars is going down. And people wonder, wow, there's no way to know what causes inflation, just corporate greed, I guess. No, government greed is what causes inflation. And here it is happening in real time. So thank God my man Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy and Donald Trump are coming up with something that we call the Department of Government Efficiency. Hang on one second. We'll explain to you. I actually think they have a pretty reasonable approach to how to fix the Pentagon.
Yeah, let's get straight to discussion. We here to talk about something about politics and government and all its hidden corruption. This show here ain't your average. This podcast you gotta get. You tuned in with Ken. This is Pursuit of Happiness.
Hey, if you guys are just getting connected to this video and watching me streaming right now, there's a quick reminder. If you love Doge, or the idea of Doge, I get that Doge hasn't technically done anything yet, but if you enjoy the Department of Government Efficiency and you'd like to make it part of your Christmas gift giving this year, you can. You could go to ilovewj.com. We have so much Doge merch, the best Doge merch. Everybody's so great. Everyone's talking about it. All the best Doge merchandise you've ever seen. You're going to love it. Hang on. Yeah. Hey, everybody. Today is World Toilet Day. And if you don't observe it, you're in trouble. Don't laugh at that. Don't laugh at that. That was pandering. That was in terrible taste. In all seriousness, though, there's this woman in Sweden. If you think our government is bad, you know, in Sweden, they actually have a gender equality minister. It's an actual job that somebody actually gets paid to be the gender equality minister of Sweden. Her name is Paulina Brandberg. And according to a recent interview, an article that just came out about her, she is deathly afraid of bananas. The gender equality minister of Sweden is terrified of inanimate objects that happen to be bananas. Now, I don't think we need to page Dr. Sigmund Freud to figure this one out, but yeah, that's a little on the nose, isn't it? Okay, all right, fine, all right. Fortunately, we don't have a gender equality ministry in the United States, but we do have other problems. We have the Pentagon. As bad as and useless and wasteful as the gender equality ministry of Sweden is, I got to assume they're not trying to stick their nose in every problem in the world and solve it with my money and yours. That's the problem with the Pentagon, isn't it? We were just looking at this audit report. Hundreds of billions of dollars at the Pentagon got flushed down the toilet in the last 12 months. Do you think anybody will be held responsible for this? The woman, the deputy defense secretary, laughed at Jon Stewart for asking her last year about this, and yet it's only gotten worse since then. If you guys have followed me on social media for a while, you know I vote Republican, but I'm like a textbook social conservative. I'm not. I don't think my positions are that far to the right at all. I think I'm pretty moderate compared to most people in America. In fact, I would call myself a lowercase l libertarian. Every year around Christmas, one of my favorite people, Senator Rand Paul, hops on Twitter, and he starts popping off his airing of his grievances right around the time of Festivus, a fake holiday invented by the people on the TV show Seinfeld, created by Jerry Seinfeld and Larry David. And basically airing of grievances. He uses it as a funny way right before the holidays when Senate, they all take a break, they go on recess, everybody flies to their respective home states and they spend the holidays with their families. Rand Paul will get on Twitter and he'll remind everybody, here's all the stuff we wasted money on this year. And to me, a libertarian, conservative, Republican, this is just, it's beautiful. It's fantastic. And every year this report comes out and there's, the waste book, the pork book. Mike Lee does something similar. Ted Cruz, they call attention to this. No one ever really pays any attention to it. As a libertarian Republican, I follow a lot of small government, Tea Party, post-Tea Party, social media accounts. There's never been anything like Doge. The Department of Government Efficiency has existed for less than a month, and it's got almost 2 million followers on social media, on Twitter, more specifically on X. This is all I ever wanted. All we ever wanted in the libertarian movement, not the Libertarian Party, but the libertarian movement, was our libertarian moment. We just wanted people to acknowledge the fact that government is too big, it's too inflated, it's too bloated, and it's the cause of a lot of our problems. The reason you can't afford to buy groceries or fill up your gas tank and go on a road trip. It's why it's become so expensive to do those things. So in just a couple of weeks here, Elon Musk, Vivek Ramaswamy have actually made Rand Paul's videos joking about government waste into something that people want to watch. Listen to this. This is not a new video. It's new to a lot of people because they just posted it publicly, but listen to Rand Paul talk about all the money we piss away on things like getting fish drunk or giving cocaine to quails or the money we spent trying to figure out what they actually said the first time they landed on the moon.
Gin to a sunfish versus tequila, which would make the sunfish more aggressive? Nearly $1 million spent studying whether or not Japanese quail, if you give them cocaine, whether or not they're more sexually promiscuous.
Who needs to know this?
Was it one small step for man, or was it one small step for a man? And in the end, $750,000 later, they couldn't decide. Was it one step for man, one step for a man?
Come on.
$2 million for the construction of a kelp and shellfish nursery in Maine.
Thank God.
$1.5 million to encourage video gaming in New York.
In New York.
We might be better off spending $1.5 million to discourage kids from playing video games.
Yeah,
$388,000 for Columbia University. Be giving a rich university that has $13 billion any money.
Let's pause it right there. He goes on to make a point. We spend a lot of money at the Baltimore Symphony as well. And I get it. Baltimore's close to Washington, D.C. It's important to the rich liberal elitists inside the Beltway there. They want to go see a opera or something. I don't know why I have to pay for that. You guys have money. Buy your own ticket. Pay for your own symphony. Is that too much to ask? So that's what Doge is. And Doge is already starting to get a lot of attention. You know, they point out here that in 1955, there were less than 1.5 million words in the U.S. tax code. Today, there are 16 million words. If you've ever wondered why is it so expensive to hire a good accountant or a good tax attorney, this is why. This is what it's for. It's designed to be complicated. They don't want you, and they don't want it to be simple. If it was simplified, a lot of tax attorneys would probably lose their jobs. Oh, poor lawyers, right? Now, for whatever it's worth, it is important to support Doge. Whatever Doge is. A gentleman over at townhall.com, David Walker, actually made the point, for some members of the Tea Party or the post-Tea Party, whatever we're in now, we've been talking about this for years. Why can't we get some kind of a government department that regulates the regulators? You ever notice whenever we come out with a new policy, a new program, a new regulation, something we're spending on, there's checks and balances to decide if we want it, but there's no checks and balances to decide 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 years later if it did any good. Wouldn't you like to know that? Wouldn't that be interesting if there was an escape lever, figuratively speaking, in every government policy that said, if this spending program doesn't accomplish its intended goals in about 2 years or 9 months or whatever it may be, it vanishes and goes away instead of existing forever. Like the Department of Education, for example. What the hell good is that doing us at this point? Nobody knows. We do not know. The federal government's gotten too big. I always thought it was funny. Years ago, a friend of mine told me, we're not really small government conservatives. Those of us in the Liberty Movement or the post-Tea Party movement, we think we're small government conservatives. We're not. How could we be? How could we be small government conservatives if we've never had a small government? No, what we actually are, if we're being more honest, we're slow government conservatives, right? The government's already massive. It's one of the biggest organizations in the world, the United States federal government, combined together with all the state governments and the municipal governments. It's pretty flippin' big, isn't it? Especially when you consider the incestual relationship we have with globalist organizations like the United Nations or the World Economic Forum or the World Health Organization. That, we're paying for all that stuff too. So yeah, it's pretty flippin' big, isn't it? But we're not really advocating for small government because we're way past the point of having small government. At best, we can hope to be slow government conservatives. When we go out and push for policies and, all I'm really asking is, can we just take a longer time to spend my paycheck? If you're already going to spend the whole paycheck, could you not do it in 5 or 10 minutes? Could you spend a month or a week or something? It's frustrating, right? Shockingly, despite being in existence since roughly 1789, the consolidated federal government does not have a future-focused, integrated, results-based, resource-constrained strategic plan. We don't have that. We're just throwing ideas at the wall and seeing if they improve, and that's all it's ever been. So that's essentially what I mean when I say we need smaller government. We do. We desperately need it now more than ever. The government is humongous. Doge could not have come along soon enough. God bless Elon Musk. The guy has basically saved humanity twice here in the period of about 4 years. First by buying Twitter, then by teaming up with Trump and Vivek Ramaswamy and maybe Ron Paul? I don't know. Trump hasn't even taken office yet, and there are already people losing their minds because when you hear a guy like Elon Musk say we're going to cut all the waste out of government, what that means to the elites, the globalists, the ruling class is our free lunch is about to go away.
You're listening to Ken Webster's Pursuit of Happiness. Very spicy radio.
Guys, Doge, the Department of Government Efficiency. We have lots of cool stuff on our website right now at ilovewj.com. That is the place to go. I want to talk about Hollywood, and I want to try to talk about transports, and I only have a few more minutes here with you guys, so I'm going to try to cram a lot into a short amount of space here. It's going to be like Mike Tyson on his wedding night. Don't laugh at that. Don't laugh at that. That is disgusting. That's sick that you would make that joke. Shame on you. Oh, that's me talking. Hang on a second, everybody. Let me get the Hollywood Sucks report on the screen here.
Is this a spoiled, pampered, narcissistic Hollywood brat or what?
Or what? Yes, Hollywood. Oh, it's never been worse, Hollywood. I wouldn't want to go there. We do a weekly report on this show every Friday where a comedian from Hollywood calls into the show and he tells me what's going on in the news there and what comedian. He's a professional comedian. I know a lot of stand-up comedians. You know, anybody that knows me knows I hang out with a lot of stand-up comedians, have them as guests on the show. Comedians have really become the modern-day philosophers of our time. If you're a good stand-up comic and you can explain what's going on in this bizarre, crazy world that we live in, you might get yourself murdered, you know? Yeah. Did you ever wonder if Bernie Mac got murdered by P. Diddy? A friend of mine, one of my best friends is a black doctor, and he's somewhat liberal, certainly compared to me. And there are very few things that we agree on politically, but we both agree there's a very dangerous thing going on between Hollywood and Washington, D.C. Isn't it fascinating how so many of the people that were at P. Diddy's freak-off parties went out and they endorsed Kamala Harris, even campaigned for her. And they all made a lot of money, too. If you're not from Houston, maybe you didn't know this, but I do pretty good for a talk radio host. I have some very successful friends. I hang out with some really fascinating people that have done much better things with their life than I have, to put it bluntly. One of those people is Tony Busby. Tony Busby was a poor kid from a low-income family, grew up in a place called Atlanta, Texas, not Atlanta, Georgia. If you've never heard of Atlanta, Texas before, don't feel bad. Most people from Atlanta, Texas have never heard of Atlanta. It's a small town near Texarkana. You've never heard of that? It's another small town. You've probably never gone there before. Way up north, not far from Oklahoma and Arkansas. And so this guy grew up, became a Marine, became an Aggie, worked his way up the ladder, eventually became one of the highest paid, probably the most effective trial lawyers in America. He's the guy that won the lawsuit, the impeachment case against Ken Paxton. He's the reason Ken Paxton is still at this particular exact specific moment the best attorney general in the United States. We have Tony Busby to thank for that. And Tony Busby went after Deshaun Watson. Whatever you guys think of that, I could tell you with great certainty, if I didn't even know Tony Busby, a close friend, a family friend of mine, was actually personally knew one of the accusers of former Houston Texans quarterback Deshaun Watson, and actually reassured me with a great amount of detail, that the accusations against Deshaun Watson were legitimate. At least that person said so. And it's my opinion that they were as well. And it's my opinion that the P. Diddy accusations are legitimate as well. Some of my black friends tell me I need to stop calling him P. Diddy. It's just Diddy. And I say no. You don't get to change your name that many times. You were Puff Daddy. You were Puffy. You were Sean Combs. You were Sean John. Stop. Just pick it. I stopped at P. Diddy. You're P. Diddy now. You don't like P. Diddy? How about P. Diddler? Maybe a more appropriate name. I digress. Busby has been representing a lot of the victims of P. Diddy. People that were at the freak-off parties that were claimed to have been trafficked or sexually molested or exploited, sometimes underage kids, really disgusting stuff. And like a lot of these cases, look, I don't know every one of the accusers. I don't know every one of the people that's being accused. They're using a lot of words like Jane Doe, John Doe in the lawsuit. But just know that I would imagine most of them are probably credible. Having personally known Tony Busby and what a good lawyer is, he's very good at vetting witnesses. I would assume, if not all of, then probably most of the accusers and accusations are probably valid and legitimate. I just knowing Tony Busby, I believe that that's probably true. Again, I don't personally know any more than most of you do. But Tony's now being sued. Now, I want to make something clear here. There is a federal case against P. Diddy right now, against Sean Combs, Puff Daddy. That's not the case with Busby. Busby is representing the victims, not the government. So Sean Combs is in a lot of trouble right now because he has both the victims coming after him with one of the best criminal trial lawyers in America, Tony Busby, but also these federal investigators at the same time. And now, kind of a moment in the case nobody was expecting, a curveball, if you will, Busby is now being sued. Busby is now being sued by one of the accusees, an anonymous self-described celebrity, meaning one of the people that the accusers are suggesting sexually exploited them, is suing Tony Busby, and we don't know who it is. We could speculate. It might be Usher. It could be Beyonce. Might be Jay-Z. It could be Justin Bieber. We don't know. I got to get the impression Justin Bieber is a victim in all of this. I will tell you this. Whoever it is, it's probably a person a lot of people on social media are talking about right now, right? Because this person is upset enough that their name is being dragged through the mud while simultaneously being asked by Tony Busby's clients to pay some amount of money for them to go away. Now, some of you might not like how our legal system works. You might, well, they should go to jail. They shouldn't have to pay some fee or whatever. Okay, but maybe the victims don't agree with that. Maybe the victim would rather have a payday and not have their name be thrust out there into the public spotlight than, you get it. Those are your two options, right? That's what they would prefer to have. At any rate, they're the victims. This is what they asked their attorney to do. So whatever you think about that, I will tell you, I believe Tony Busby. I think Tony Busby's a winner. I think he's a smart guy. I think he's very good at sniffing out BS. So I think there's something to all of this. Now, interestingly enough, the person suing Tony Busby right now, the attorney representing the victims, that's not the only use of the word extortion or blackmail that's getting thrown around right now. Supposedly, P. Diddy, Sean Combs, is extorting the victims from jail. There are claims, there are lots of reports today, TMZ and a lot of other sensationalized celebrity news outlets are reporting that from behind closed doors, from behind his prison cell walls there, Sean Combs is contacting his son, his lawyer, his friends, maybe some of his more sketchy friends, maybe some of his friends, and they're going after the victims because they know who these people are. The fact that they would know who to go after tells you the accusations are probably credible. There's also a report today from some journalist claiming that behind the scenes, inside jail right now, P. Diddy is the superstar of superstars. Apparently, a lot of the inmates are competing to be his friend, and they want to clean his cell and make his bed. I don't know if any of that's true. I do know that if Sean Diddy is actually gay, like so many people have suggested, there's probably some other weird stuff going on in there too, but I won't even begin to speculate about that. Just a thought I had, and we'll go ahead and leave that alone right now. Sean Diddy probably deserves to be in prison for a very long time, and I hope he ends up there. Sean Diddy Combs claims feds raided his jail cell and took his private notes. Now, I don't know if you're aware of this or not, but if you're a prisoner in a federal prison cell, you don't have a right to privacy. You didn't like that they came in and looked through your private notes? Okay, what'd you write on the notes? What could be written on those notes that you would worry the federal investigators would use against you? Sounds a little bit like there was a confession on those notes, or him telling his lawyer something that was presumably illegal that he did once to some of these people, including underage kids, they claim. I'm just saying, with every passing day, confirmation bias, you can call it that if you want, but I would tell you it seems more and more like Diddy is definitely guilty in all of this. And you got to wonder why they have him in a jail cell with Sam Bankman-Fried, the FTX crypto bro guy. Are they going to get murdered? I don't know. I do know this. I'm Kenny Webster. And to those of you watching me on social media right now, stick around. We have to wrap up this radio show in just a few short moments. Actually, to those of you listening on the radio, I have an interview coming up in a few short moments with one of my favorite radio personalities from California. Spoiler alert, it's not Larry Elder. But to the rest of you, stick around. I'm going to continue this show right now on social media.
Stop it, government. Get out of my life.
You're listening to The Pursuit of Happiness Radio.
It's always weird doing a radio show while I'm doing a live stream. Like, what am I so busy doing? It's an hour in my day. Why don't I just do the live stream and then do the radio show and do them separately? But people often say they want to see what happens when we're doing the radio show. And I think the information's interesting. I don't know if sitting here watching me in one of my dumb shirts in front of a TV, I don't know. Thank you for joining me, I guess. Tell you what, I'll give you something more interesting than my mug to look at right now. Let's talk about what Nancy Mace just did. Nancy Mace, I'm not even going to comment on the fact that she's the perfect combination of both beautiful and brilliant. I like Nancy Mace. I'm a big fan of Nancy Mace. Nancy Mace has just filed a bill, introduced a resolution yesterday that would ban biological men from using the women's restrooms inside of the Capitol building. And she's being attacked for this. Transphobia, they claim. How many people out there really feel comfortable with a 200-plus pound man putting on a little black cocktail dress and going into the bathroom while your daughter's in there alone? How many really feel comfortable about that? Maybe you could say, this is a bill that Nancy wants because she doesn't want to have to look at men in the bathroom and that, that's her own. She's doing it for her own selfish purposes or whatever. But so what? Doesn't she deserve to be safe at work too? It's not a controversial bill. With Trump, Mike Johnson, and whoever's John Thune in charge of the federal government now, both the House, the Senate, and the executive branch, I got to assume this bill passes. If it doesn't, you really got to wonder. I will say this. You remember back in 2017, 2019, right up into 2020 there, the first 2 years of the Trump presidency, Trump did a pretty good job. I think he did. There's a reason we reelected him. But you remember we didn't get that wall built. And this conversation we're having right now about trans people in little girls' bathrooms or professional sports, for example, it didn't get resolved then. It tells you something. We don't have a Trump problem. We do have a Republican problem. We do have a problem with guys like John Cornyn, the only Republican right now. Well, I mean, the most influential Republican right now, stepping in the way of Donald Trump's cabinet picks. That frustrates me. But this isn't about John Cornyn. I've talked about that a lot on the radio over the last few days. I happen to agree with Nancy Mace. This is a bill that needs to pass. But men in the bathroom, that is small potatoes compared to the bigger issue right now of protecting women's sports. I can't even believe this is controversial. Right now, two prominent members of the liberal media are getting a lot of heat from, interestingly enough, fellow Democrats. Because even though the Republicans just won all these elections, even though you have people like Gavin Newsom, the California governor, pivoting to the right, you've got Miss Universe is a biological skinny blonde that just the whole world, certainly the western half of the world, seems to be pivoting to the right a little bit. But there are some people that are just resisting. One of those people is former White House press secretary Jen Psaki, otherwise known as Jen Psaki. And Jen Psaki, really, she gets to have her cake and eat it too. She's still considered to be a spokesperson for the Democrat Party while simultaneously being considered a member of the mainstream media. How could you be both? You're either part of the media or you're part of the political machine. If you're part of both, this is exactly what the founding fathers were against. Anyway, I digress. Here's Jen. What's really interesting about this clip you're about to watch, Democrats are kind of mad at her for taking this stance.
There's obviously a lot of soul searching right now going on within the Democratic Party, and that's a good thing.
Okay.
But what I worry about is that in the course of all that soul searching, some Democrats might reach the wrong sweeping conclusions.
Do you know what that means? Some Democrats might become conservative or agree with the Republicans. But what she really means to say is we need to take our own crappy ideas and remarket them instead of saying maybe some of our policies like, I don't know, gender mutilation, mutilating the genitals of little kids. Maybe it's not a good policy. Maybe maybe even moderates and people that lean a bit to the left would agree that's a problem. It's the reason we got Elon Musk and Tulsi and RFK Jr. But anyway, that's just, I'm just translating liberal speak here for you. That's what she's actually saying.
And there are a lot of issues that fall into that bucket. But one in particular that stuck out to me is transgender rights.
Oh, right.
Republicans spent hundreds of millions of dollars on anti-trans ads this election cycle.
And Democrats spent hundreds of millions of dollars on pro-trans ads this cycle. In fact, I think they spent more. Did Trump spend all of his money? No. And he didn't have as much money as Kamala did. She had over $1 billion. Somehow she's $20 million in debt now. But again, another incomplete statement from the very misleading Jen Psaki.
Including one that showed Vice President Harris talking about government funding for gender-reaffirming care for prisoners and detainees. If that sounds like a particularly obscure issue, it is, because it applies to a tiny group of people. And it's also a policy that, by the way, was in place during the first Trump presidency. Another one of the lines that ran over and over again in those ads and throughout right-wing media is this idea that America is faced with a crisis of boys playing in girls' sports. Now, these ads created this perception that the issues of trans kids playing sports was dominating schools across the country, which is completely false. Some people got pulled into that argument. I mean, immediately after the election, Congressman Seth Moulton told the New York Times that, quote, Democrats spend way too much time trying not to offend anyone rather than being brutally honest about the challenges many Americans face. I have 2 little girls. I don't want them getting run over on a playing field by a male or formerly male athlete. But as a Democrat,
I'm going to pause it right here. She's trying to make the point that we hyper-focused on this issue when it's really not that big of a deal, she says. Now, there's a lot of reasons why she's wrong about that. Have you guys ever looked at, I don't actually have this chart on my screen right now, but have you guys ever looked at one of these charts before? Transgenderism based on, the generation, right? Let me put this on the screen for you here real quick right now. Look at what we're looking at here. Here are how many transgenders when your grandparents were around, right? The greatest generation, World War II, that sort of thing. Not a lot of them, right? And then baby boomers here. This would be your parents, right? I mean, for me it is. Wow. went up just a little bit, but not much. Gen X went up just a little bit more, but not much. Then, over the last several years here, something changed in the last decade or two. The World Health Organization realized this stuff is buku bucks. You can make a lot of money off of genital mutilation, first, let's start with this. We have these drugs, chemical castration drugs. Well, what are those all about? Okay, well, we made these drugs that we use to punish rapists in prison so they don't, they'll quit getting urges, that sort of thing. And it's like, wow, that's great, but we can only give those to so many people. Is there anything else we could do with that drug? Yeah, you know what? Chemical castration drugs are also puberty blockers. We can give them to prepubescent kids. Now, that's one example of a way that the pharmaceutical industry figured out there's more we could do with these drugs than what we previously knew. Kind of like how Viagra started as blood pressure medicine, or Botox was originally for face lifts, I guess, but now, or whatever you'd call that, but now they use it for migraines, right? Chemical castration drugs can be puberty blockers. Well, that's great. The World Health Organization removed transgenderism from the list of mental health disorders several years ago after they realized how much money was involved here. Well, how much money is involved, you might wonder? As it turns out, it's about $1 million more per person. They use the word gender-affirming care or health care. I'll just use the term medical costs. A transgender person spends $1 million more during their lifetime on medical fees than you and I do. In addition to the surgical stuff that they're doing is hormone treatment, therapy, that sort of thing. A lot of stuff, probably mental health treatment as well. I don't really have a problem with them seeing a psychiatrist, but you do wonder what the psychiatrist is telling them. I'll also add this to that. As a lot of you guys know, I'm not a raging social conservative. If you get to the point in life where you're a fully grown adult and you want to do this, you should absolutely have the right to do it. The problem is we're doing it to kids. And we're not just doing it to kids. We're entertaining these people so much that we're allowing them to screw up girls' sports. I was just making the point here that Jen Psaki says, this isn't actually that common of a problem. There aren't actually that many trans people in sports. And wouldn't you know it, John Oliver over here on HBO, he just we're live streaming, so it doesn't matter anyway. Not to get off topic here, but do you see what's interesting about this? What's going on here? John Oliver just unintentionally made a point I've made before about school choice. If you live somewhere and there's only one local public school and you don't make enough money to send your kids to private school or homeschool or charter school, you have to accept the fact that there might be predators in the local public school, and there's nothing you could do about it. But the funniest thing and that's a great argument for school choice that he just made. I don't think he knows that. But the other funny thing about this is, do you see the person he's using it as an example here? It's a white male, probably looks like he's in his 30s or 40s. I'm sure those people exist. I'm sure there are white men around the same age group as me or him, for example, that are probably predators in public schools. Happens all the time. But if you do a Google News search for teacher has sex with student, do you know what the vast majority of these cases are? I bet you guys could already answer the question without me telling you, but in case you're not catching the hint I'm throwing down here, it's women. Women are the ones in public schools that are having sex with not every news story. I know sometimes they're straight, sometimes they're gay, but more often than not, when you hear a news story about a teacher having sex with a student, what is that person almost always? It's almost always a woman, strangely, not even like an ugly woman, for example. Again, I'm getting away from the point here. The point they're trying to make is, don't worry about trans in sports. There aren't actually that many trans out there to compete against your kids in college or high school level athletics. It's a very misleading point, and here's why. As I just showed you guys before we watched that clip of John Oliver, the number of trans people in America is vastly increasing, not just by generation, but by year. If you went back a decade ago, you wouldn't find that many trans kids in public schools. Now, these numbers doubled and doubled and doubled and doubled, and the exact number of them varies from report to report, but according to UCLA, a number I just looked up this statistic a short time ago, there are millions now of trans people all over the country, or non-binary, fluid, gender neutral, whatever. And again, I really want to stress here, I'm not Matt Walsh, guys. I'm not, this isn't some Christian conservative me preaching. I don't care if a fully grown adult does that as long as it doesn't affect my life. But this actually does affect people's lives. And if you don't agree with me, if you don't think we're putting girls at risk or whatever, here's just one video of many that I found before I started this live stream today of a girl at a public school telling you how she was injured by a trans athlete. Go ahead, young lady. There's a lot of these stories lately seem to be about volleyball. I think this one is. She was a middle school kid.
Hi. My name is Peyton McNabb. I am a senior at Hiwassee Dam High School in Murphy, North Carolina.
Sorry.
Due to the North Carolina High School Athletic Association policy allowing biological males to compete against biological females, my life has forever been changed. On September 1st, 2022, I was severely injured in a high school volleyball game by a transgender athlete on the opposing team. I suffered from a concussion and neck injury that to this day I am still recovering from.
Wow.
Other injuries I still suffer from today include impaired vision, partial paralysis on my right side, constant headaches, as well as anxiety and depression.
Okay, let's pause it right there. Imagine being John Oliver or Jen Psaki, and telling this young woman, it doesn't really matter that happened to you. Doesn't really make, this didn't happen. Like, we understand when you go out into the public, when you're on the streets of a big city, when you travel internationally, you run a risk of getting kidnapped. When you go downtown in your city at night, you run that risk of getting robbed, for example. When you invest in a shady, sketchy company, you run the risk of losing money on that stock market investment. Those are all valid things, right? But when you send a little girl to public school and she joins the cheerleading squad, the volleyball team, the field hockey team, you don't expect there to be a man competing against them that could physically injure them. Are these examples rare? Well, Jen Psaki says that they're rare. I happen to disagree. I think if it happens once, it's worth addressing, especially when you consider this is a cultural trend that is vastly increasing in numbers. If you went back 20 years, you wouldn't find that many trans kids trying to play on a high school girls volleyball team. 10 years ago, when we first heard about this, we thought, well, that sounds bad. How common could it be? It's becoming more and more common every year. If it's becoming more and more common every year, it's a pretty good reason why it needs to get addressed. I'm Kenny Webster. Thanks so much for watching. I'm going to check in on your comments before I get out of here. What's up to Paul? Greetings to YouTube commenter. Have you tried slapping it around some? When people speak in vague generality, like, I don't know what it was. I don't know what that was in reference to. Jordan says, I have the same exact problems. I don't know what the problem was. There's nothing wrong with the comments you guys left, but I'm commenting on it. I'm reacting to it 40 minutes later, so I don't know what you guys were saying. Paul says, Doge, to help, I'll cheerfully take all the remaining tequila and Coke not used to the testing. Okay, Paul's reacting to the video we all watched where we learn that we spend millions of dollars each year giving drugs and alcohol to animals to see how it affects them. And as Rand Paul has pointed out, maybe we don't need to spend money on that anymore. Justin on YouTube says, why don't they just have trans versus trans sports? Dude, yes, I would be okay with that. It wouldn't bother me that much. If we must have trans in society, maybe there needs to be a third bathroom. Maybe there needs to be a third. I don't know, guys. I don't actually claim to know all the answers. I do know it's not fair to women to take their space away. You know what I always found very interesting? This is something feminists love when you point it out to them here in the western half of the world. Did you know that in Japan, they have trains, because public transportation is very common in Japan. They have train cars you can only ride on if you are a woman or a child. Mothers with small children can ride on a train car without any men around. And when you explain that out loud to somebody like Barbara Walters or Joy Reid or Joy Bear, somebody like that, well, rest in peace, Barbara Walters is dead now. I don't know what her take is on this, but who's the other one? Barbara Streisand, or, those women. If you explain it out loud to the cackling hens of The View, they would go, yeah, Japan, that's awesome. But then if you point out to them, if a guy puts on a ball gown, he doesn't get to ride on that train. What Japanese people are transphobic, they would tell you. It's actually a good idea. Maybe it's a good idea to have a safe space for our more vulnerable citizens in society, women and children. As a fully grown man, I'm comfortable with the fact that I'm not allowed in that space. It's not for me. That's fine with me. I don't need to go there. I'm bothered by the fact that somebody that looks like me and has the same physical form that does want to go there. That's what's so strange about that. So Justin, I agree with your point there. I'd also be okay with having a sports league for people that are on steroids exclusively. I don't have a problem with that either. Dale says Psaki is full of shinola. The establishment made MK Ultra the psyop front and center. I tend to agree. Justin says human laws don't apply to them. I don't know what you're talking about. Trans people, probably. Dale on Twitter says it's all about socially re-engineering, emasculating men. Complaint eunuchs and women are the goal. Yeah, I think so, too. Dale says criminalizing toxic masculinity. Daniel Penny supports the hypothetical. Yeah, I'm going to tell you what, I'll do a video tomorrow on the latest from the Daniel Penny trial. That is an unbelievable case where the medical expert they brought in actually admitted out loud that she manipulated some of the evidence in the case because she watched a video online and she decided she didn't like Daniel Penny. I'm Kenny Webster. If you don't mind doing just a couple things for me here, if you do any Christmas shopping, go consider one of our sponsors, mystore.com, mypillow.com. Promo code WJ saves you a ton of money. If you want to buy stuff right from us, like cool Doge merch or Walton & Johnson merch, you can get that at ilovewj.com. And even if you don't want to spend any money or buy anything from me or my buddies, that's fine. It's okay. If I could just ask one more favor, like this video, hit subscribe, hit follow, hit retweet, hit share. I know it's annoying when people on social media beg for that stuff, but that really is how our industry works and how we're able to grow our brand and stuff. So if you liked what you see, if you enjoyed it at all, thank you so much. Also, just one more quick point. I have 500,000 followers on Facebook where I have 4 viewers, and I have about 55,000 followers on Twitter where I currently have 380 viewers. So yeah, I would say maybe Mark Zuckerberg sucks, and we do appreciate Elon Musk for saving the planet. I love you all. Thanks so much for watching this video. Have a great day, everybody. I'll see you tomorrow. Oh, back at 3 p.m. on KPRC in Houston.
You are listening to the Pursuit of Happiness Radio. Tell the government to kiss your ass when you listen to the show.